What does it take to create meaningful trust? If you listened to our last episode about 2021 predictions, you know that I think trust is going to be a big trend this year, specifically data trust. And it turns out that creating data trust works just like creating any other kind of trust. In fact, Brené Brown wrote that trust is built in very small moments. That's as true of your relationships as it is with your data. You build trust through countless acts of showing up and getting the job done. The flip side of that is trust can be lost very quickly. Warren Buffett said it takes 20 years to build a reputation and only 5 minutes to ruin it. And he's right. And I thought about these ideas of building trust during my conversation with Alyssa Fitzpatrick. If you don't know Alyssa, she's the general manager of worldwide partner co-sell at Microsoft, and she is the go-to business leader when it comes to partners. Alyssa talks a lot about trust, which makes sense. One of the reasons Microsoft has been so successful is they built their entire brand around being a company you can count on. You can trust that Microsoft will show up and they'll get the job done. In so many ways, Microsoft is a model of consistency, and honestly, we should all reach to that same standard, whether that trust is with your customers, your colleagues, your partners, or even in your personal life. So with all that said, let's jump into the interview. Welcome to Truth Be Known. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Truth Be Known. We have an incredible guest today. We have Alyssa Fitzpatrick, who's the general manager of worldwide partner co-sell at Microsoft. So if you don't know Alyssa, she is basically the go-to person if you want anything that happens about partner, about co-sell motions. She is the absolute leader in the space, in the industry. She's won a ton of accolades. Alyssa, do you want to start us off and tell us a little bit more about you, how you got started in tech?
Absolutely. Thank you for that great introduction. I appreciate that. Yeah, it's been a long journey, and I've enjoyed every step of the way. I feel very fortunate to have been in the tech industry for the last 30 years. I wound up in this industry not on purpose. I went to school to get a finance degree, and I fell in love with coding when I was at school, and I ended up getting a computer science degree. And the next thing I know, my first job out of school was with Andersen Consulting. And so I found myself on the tech path quite early. And I've really enjoyed the journey and the learnings that I've had throughout my career, and watching what's happened with this industry and how we've grown and evolved and just gone through so many changes and weathered so many storms. It's just been an incredible ride.
How did you end up at Microsoft?
It's an interesting story because I've kind of done quite a tour of duty, considering where I started with Andersen Consulting as a consultant, and then I moved into a long stint at Oracle, where I really kind of cut my teeth on a global role, and I moved over to Europe to really get exposed to living and working in another country and another region, and exposing myself to how does the world work from a global multinational scale. And then I moved on back into Silicon Valley, and I spent a good decade at a company called Informatica, which I think we all know quite well, and learned a lot about growing and evolving a small company in the Valley, and a lot about data and the value of data. From there, I went on into security and got exposed to security through McAfee and Intel, and then on to the mainframe world and really application development and DevOps at CA. And I ultimately came to Microsoft because I felt like I had really swallowed the industry as far as all the different tech trends and technology companies, whether it was an SI, a ISV, an MSP. I've really been exposed to all different types of companies, and I wanted to go to the company that has the largest scale. I wanted to really experience what is scale at the size of Microsoft. And so taking on that co-sell role from Microsoft was really, the challenge of all challenges. And how do we bring the largest ecosystem to bear with the largest sales organization? And it just felt like such a great challenge to bring all of the learnings I've had to bear and all of the understanding I have in the marketplace, bring that to Microsoft and really try to evolve the co-sell motion here.
No, that's awesome, and I'd love to dig into some of the work you've done at Microsoft, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know you, and know a little bit about your team and your background and some of the work that you've done there. I can only imagine going in, you've got thousands of sellers, tons and tons of people. There's a lot of scale. I'm sure you went in and said, everything is perfect. I don't want to change anything. I'm just going to keep running the ship exactly as it is. But if that wasn't the case, what are some things that when you walked into Microsoft and went, you know, I've got to make some hard calls here. I've got to try to evolve where we're going from a partner perspective. What are some of the things you faced?
That's such a great question because you always think as you start a new job, I'm going to go in and I'm going to listen. I'm going to do a listening tour and really understand the business, and then I'm going to step back and bring my background and my skill set to bear to bring the best decision making I can. And so I walked into Microsoft with that strategy of I'm going to listen, I'm going to learn, I'm going to understand. And within 1 month of landing at Microsoft, they tapped on my shoulder and said, we would like you to participate in one of the biggest corporate transformations that a company has ever gone through. We are going to transform our commercial business, and we're going to spend the next 6 to 9 months building that transformation. And so I landed at Microsoft right at the heart of a massive, massive change that I didn't actually get the time to go back and do the listening tour and do the learning. I was thrown into the heat of the moment, right in the fire, and we were making changes extraordinarily quickly. And so I had to adapt very, very quickly to Microsoft and really do a lot of learning. I was reading at night. I was trying so hard to understand what was being said in the meetings because Microsoft is a language all on its own when you join internally, and just trying to keep up with what I was trying to understand how Microsoft was running and operating today and where we were trying to get to in this massive corporate transformation. So I went through the corporate transformation over that 6 to 9 months, and I landed in the newly designed Microsoft org. So in a way, it actually was a wonderful way to onboard because I got to build what we were going to then execute. But what I also learned in the process, as we were creating this new world order for Microsoft, I learned a lot about some of the processes and ways in which we conducted ourselves internally that I felt were very legacy oriented.
Mhm.
And so in the co-sell role, I was able to kind of pick out a few things that I thought could really change the game for our co-sell motion. And so in the heart of this transformation, I was able to say, look, there's something that we've been doing for years and years and years that's actually not servicing our co-selling with our partners, but we do it anyway. And so I'd like to raise my hand and make a pretty significant change within the company. And so this wasn't actually in the transformation effort. This was on the heels of it. It was the learning that I got out of the transformation work I did. And so this came actually out of band. This didn't come in sequence with
Mhm.
all of the transformation and the culture shift and everything we were doing to land this big change to the company. I was coming afterwards. And so while we landed our new structure, that's when I started to sell my new strategy because it wasn't folded into the original design. I needed to go around and gain support for my idea within Microsoft. So, what was the idea? Well, the idea really came to me when I started going through how our sellers were engaging with our partners and how the world that I came to at Microsoft was a world in which we had a lot of reselling. We had a customer base that knew our product and would come in and ask us for product. There wasn't a whole lot of proactive selling that we had to do in the modern work environment. But as the cloud evolved and as the partner ecosystem built, we now had technology and solutions that were meeting our customer needs that was not in-house anymore. And we needed to understand how do we engage with the partners to bring the best solution to our customer. And that was not a skill set our sellers had. And so when I tried to find out the heart of how our sellers engaged with partners, I found one thing that was very telling, that we used a certain field within our CRM system for our engagement with partners. And it was called our partner attach field. And so our sellers could go in and write in any partner in our partner attach field. And we had 90% partner attach in every revenue moment we have at Microsoft. And that's fantastic. We're very partner first. But what I found out is that that partner attach field was in that record alone. It didn't connect to anything. It didn't inform anyone, nor was it verified and vetted against a true existing partner. And so a seller could mistype a partner's name. And so there was no checks or balances to see if that partner was truly included in that opportunity and if they knew they were included in that opportunity. So my idea that I took around the company was, let's remove the partner attach field and create a partner sharing field, where when we put a partner name into an opportunity that we're working on within Microsoft, it will inform the partner. It actually creates a sharing activity, a workflow that will send data points from that record to that seller at the partner that we are engaging with. So it can create a bi-directional connection to that partnering moment. And so this was a big lift for our company, because now it was engaging with our partners, not only in the way that we say that, yep, we're emailing with them or we're talking to them on the phone. This was getting system to system engagement. And it now became trackable.
Mm-hmm.
And it shows us, where are we partnering? Where are we engaging with partners? Not just where we think a partner might be in an opportunity, but where are we actually engaging, and where is that partner accepting that lead that we're sharing with them? So this was a really big change for Microsoft. And in order to do so, I needed to get buy-in and mind share from around the company. And so that meant that my first order of business was to get my boss on board, Gabriella Schuster, who runs our partner organization, to agree that by moving from attaching partners to sharing with partners, this was a very productive move for our co-sell motion, ultimately benefiting the company and the ecosystem in the long run. I gained that buy-in, and that started my next journey, which was going to each of the leaders of the selling segments and going into our marketing organization, into our operations organization, and then ultimately engineering. I had to engineer this field to create that bi-directional connection with our partners. So this was a very significant overhaul for Microsoft, and it's been a year and a half in the making. And so we intended to launch the sharing field and remove the attach field in April of last year. So you can imagine what happened in April of last year. So we got into April, and we actually had to hit pause. It was very difficult, because we'd gotten this momentum. And you know how once you get momentum building, you want to continue, because if you pause in that momentum, you may not have the ability to get that going again. So I had a lot of momentum on sharing with partners. And then we hit COVID. And I could not ask my sellers to rip and replace a behavior they had been doing for many, many, many years prior to this change in the heart of COVID, and continue to keep the kind of engagement that we wanted to have with our partner ecosystem and drive a change like this during this unstable time. So changed our goals. It changed our ability to execute against our plans. But nonetheless, we soldiered forward, and we pushed into July, when we kicked off our brand new fiscal year this year. So July, we turned a corner, and that's when we softly landed our attach to share field, where we told our sellers, we're going to be moving throughout this year to the share field, We are turning off the ability to just attach a partner, and that happened in November of this year.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've been moving to an aggressive goal where we're asking our sellers to share more than half of their pipeline with our partner ecosystem. So we've been making strides against that month after month, July, August, and I've been tracking this each and every month. It is a massive culture shift. It's a very big change to take to a seller. We may have gotten the top level buy-in from our leadership, but when it starts to trickle down, the sellers have to understand why they should make an action and how it affects them.
Mm-hmm.
And so we couldn't just land it with the top level leader buy-in. We needed to do the groundswell, which was the more that sellers share outbound with partners, the more you're going to create a healthy ecosystem. And the more you're going to generate transparency and trust with your partners, and therefore your inbound leads will start to grow. And your entire population of pipeline will grow together with your ecosystem. So landing that message with our sellers throughout the last 6 months is really starting to resonate. We got to December of this year, and we are just shy of 50% worldwide of our ecosystem, of our pipeline being shared with our Microsoft ecosystem. So I'm absolutely delighted that we started a change a year and a half ago with an idea. We hit a pretty big road bump along the way, but we were still able to drive this transition to gain the leadership buy-in, to engineer the change into our systems, to communicate to our partners the process change, and then to land it with our seller population and actually share pipeline with our partner ecosystem. And so this has been a very big shift, but I'm really excited about this because I'm hearing a lot of areas talk about 80% sharing and these big lofty goals coming that are far higher than what I landed from a corporate perspective. And so I'm really excited that not only has this big, huge decision landed, but it's changing the way that Microsoft is engaging with our partners. And it's a very positive experience with the ultimate goal, the ultimate final goal of generating trust. Because really what it comes down to is it wasn't just about naming a partner on an opportunity. It's about engagement and building trust with our partners and making sure that we have transparency and predictability in the way that we're working together. So that was a huge shift for us. And it was a long time coming, but it's really fun to talk about a decision like that today. If you'd asked me a month ago, I was right in the heart of what are our numbers going to look like? But we surpassed what we thought we were going to be able to do. And now it opens up where we think we might be able to go from here.
I mean, I love this story, and there's so many things to unpack in here. It is how you start with an idea, you're driving this completely transformational idea and transition in a massive, massive organization. It's how you get buy-in. It's how you drive change management. And what it's super interesting for me about this is how you build trust, how you build the partner ecosystem. And it is transparent. It is really thinking about what's the relationship, what do we think the long-term success of the business is going to need, and this sort of focus on relationships with the ecosystem, driving the right behavior. And then, we throw COVID in because we needed to increase the degree of difficulty of behavior for thousands of people. When you first thought about this, when you first got the idea, what sparked that idea for you where you went, having the drop down or just having the free form is the wrong thing to do? What was that aha moment for you?
It actually came from conversations with my field. And when I was talking with my field, they would say to me, Alyssa, we're actually engaging with partners. We're talking to them. We have meetings. I've got email trails I can show you. And I'm like, hold on, guys. I love it. I love that you're doing the right thing, but we have to show it in the system. I've got to have a way to track it because I love to hear that from you. But if I can't see it, I don't think it's happening. I really don't. And so that's really what it came down to is I kept hearing from my field, we're doing all the right things. And I thought, well, let's prove it. Let's prove it not only to Microsoft, to ourselves, but let's prove it to our ecosystem too. Let's prove it by actively sharing with them what you're sharing on spreadsheets or you're talking about on the phone. Let's do it in our system so we have a system of record. And then we can start to track performance of partners globally. We can start to see which workloads are performing better than others. We can start to really isolate best practices in demand generation. Or, hey, we saw something really work in Spain, and there's like-sized countries with the same problem. Let's take that best practice and cross-pollinate. But if we don't have the data to go and inspect and understand, then we're never going to be able to grow and scale to the degree that we could. And so we've really got to document this in our system. And it's not just about documenting in case you move on, it's documenting to harvest for the success of our customers. It's documenting to harvest for the success of our partners and it being able to inform them that, hey, that co-sell effort yielded great results. This one, not so much. Let's not repeat that effort. Let's go repeat the other one that worked. And so the data that you can bring forth by documenting in systems is what gives you the power. We have great memories, but we can't capture data the way our systems can. And so that was really the aha moment when I heard my field telling me we're doing everything right. And I am saying to them, fantastic, let's document it. Let's show that we're doing the right thing. And then let's connect the dots on where the right thing yields the biggest impact. And so that's really that aha moment. But then it made me realize that this is a big effort because there are many, many, many stakeholders. Because when you talk about making a change that affects the sellers on the front line, you've got to track that all the way back to where does that data actually get inspected and then measured and then budgeted for, right? Because everything that goes into the system from the seller ultimately tracks back to what are we building for our future? So that's really where kind of the impetus for the change came. And then it just started to become more and more real the more I realized how much we needed to be tracking our activities.
It absolutely is. And you brought it up so beautifully of we've got great memories, but at the end of the day, how are we going to scale this? And
Mhm.
how are we going to scale each individual rep says, I did this and I did that. And if you were a 10-person company, you'd be fine. But
Mhm.
you're not a 10-person company, and having that data, having the information in one place, now all of a sudden you can make better decisions. You can come to partners and say, "This is how I believe we should partner better together." I think about resource allocation and budget allocation and how as both a partner and a business leader, we all show up better because we have access to the right data. We can trust the data that we have. And it also, I mean, as a partner of Microsoft, it makes us so much. Makes the working relationship so much easier. Going, we have the same set of information. What can we do? What can we do that we both know is working? And now we can each come to the table with, hey, this demand program worked really well. Let's do more of this. This one was a great idea, but
Mhm.
let's let's move on from that one.
Exactly. And then you start to learn more. And now that we're 6 months in, I'm starting to ask questions that say, well, we have 5 sales stages, right? We've got sales stage 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What happens when you share with a partner in sales stage 1? What happens when you share in sales stage 3? So now I'm seeing at what point when we share do we get the most impact? And what I'm learning based on all this data, I've got 20,000 sellers in the world now sharing for 6 months. I've got some data. And so I'm starting to cull through my data and I'm learning that the earlier that we share in our sales cycle, it can speed up the velocity of that transaction by 40%. If we share late at the 11th hour, it can tend to slow it down. It's just the way it is. You bring somebody to bear at the very end of your sales cycle, yeah, it might lag the cycle. Early sharing speeds things up. That's a great lesson learned. And I can take that to my field and say, hey guys, don't wait to the last minute. You're going to slow your sales cycle down, just like you're afraid of. Share early. And I have data and facts to back me up now.
I love that because that's always the pushback sellers get when they talk about partners are no, they're just going to slow things down. Partners are going to slow things down. And you're like, absolutely not. If you're in sales stage 5 and you're ready to close, yes, but that's the wrong time to share. And now that you can go in and say, bring them in stage 1 and stage 2, and by the way, it's going to go faster, and I bet it's going to help win rates. It is the right thing to do for the business. And then it just gets the companies in your ecosystem an even tighter relationship with Microsoft.
Well, and it just starts to open up different conversations because when you start to get leadership asking about how much of our pipeline are we sharing with partners, that's a question that was not discussed a year ago. So that's now happening at the leadership levels, which means culture shift is happening. And so it takes a while to get that culture shift, but that once you start to shift culture, that's when you know your change is taking hold. And that's where we're at right now, where I'm starting to see culture shift. We're not done. We still have a long way to go, and we're learning along this entire journey. But that culture shift piece is where you start to say, I'm hitting that point where now I'm starting to kind of get on that glide path. So I think that you go through periods, like different elements of the decision-making process, which is, gaining the buy-in, understanding all the stakeholders and their roles in the decision and how it rolls out, and then really landing that culture shift across all the stakeholder communities with their stake in the game. Because you can't shift a culture if they don't have stake in the game. And so that's part of that whole creation of landing a good decision and getting it to take hold, is not forgetting the culture shift. That's the pinnacle of when things are working.
Absolutely. Do you have any advice you can give people on how to successfully enable the cultural shift, do the change management around this?
So there's one thing that I've always, I guess it's probably been the last 10 years. There's three words that really guide me when it comes to cultural transformation, and actually even running my own organization. I talk to my teams about this. First and foremost is transparency, and being extremely transparent about what you're doing, where you're going, the whys, a full understanding of the program, the project, the decisions being made. The more transparent you can be, the more buy-in you will get from those that are involved. The second thing is consistency, and being consistent in your approaches, not making different decisions in different scenarios, being consistent in your approach and being consistent in your treatment. So if one area gets a certain set of rules and regulations, every area should get a certain set of rules and regulations, and being consistent in your approach. And so that then leads to my third, which is predictability. Because if you are transparent and consistent in your approach, you become predictable. And I actually find that to be a really strong element of my culture, is being predictable, so that my teams know the decisions I'm going to make. They pretty much can predict where I'm going to go. I'm not going to show up and have some crazy idea. They have a good idea of where I'm headed. And driving with transparency, consistency, and predictability also gives a lot of confidence to your leadership and to your partner ecosystem, to your sellers, that you know where you're going, you know what the journey looks like, and you're consistent in your approach, so that they know when they've got questions or they're coming to you, you're going to have pretty predictable answers. And so when I shape all of my actions and everything I do around those three words as themes, that really helps me make sure I'm consistent across all of my communications. And so those are the three that guide me: consistency, transparency, and predictability.
I think that's fantastic. And the thing when you're talking about predictability and that your leaders know what to expect from you, they know where your head's going to go. It reminds me a little bit of something that I've heard a few times is surprises are for birthdays.
I like that. That's good. I agree.
And it's the no one likes surprises. Surprises are for birthdays.
Yep. Yep.
So, and the having such a big cultural shift and being able to keep surprises to birthdays and having that this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it, you know where we're going to go, has to give people that degree of comfort of, yes, we're making a big crazy change, but it's not that, we're going to come in out of left field and change for no reason. People are brought along for the ride.
Right. Right. And I think the other thing is, my big objective was driving this cultural change. Now that we're here, now is the what's next. And so that's where my team is like, okay, well, this happened. We were able to make this shift, and we're going to continue to drive the shift because the best that Microsoft can show up as is, 80-90% sharing. So as we continue driving, we really want to understand more about the when and the how and really what happens next. And so sharing is a leading indicator. It really is. This is not a performance indicator. It is showing that our sellers are engaging, but it is a leading indicator to the performance of our co-sell motion. And so I'm now looking at how do I take this and has as a leading indicator, what are the things that it's teaching me, and what are the next steps I need to take? So if we get very good in sharing, where do we go from here? And that's where it gets exciting, because now that we're able to start down this path of this cultural shift, it opens up a whole broad range of, okay, we're in the cloud. What are we trying to build? How do we create a world in which our customers can shop for the best solution and our sellers can promote the best solutions to the customers if they don't know them? How can they self-serve in the marketplace? How do they work with other partners? And how do I bring that ecosystem now in a transparent, consistent, and predictable manner so that we're all engaging with each other? I've now got my sellers engaging. Now I want partners engaging with each other, and I want marketplace engaging. And so all of this coming together, that's where our next steps are. And that's where we take this cultural shift.
That's amazing. And this is in so many ways why, every time I talk to anyone about partner, it's you have to talk to Alyssa from Microsoft because she's the person that knows everything about this.
I wish.
And I know this didn't come from nowhere and that you didn't wake up one day and were just absolutely brilliant and you had tons of experience on this. So can you tell me about something earlier in your career that helped guide a lot of your thought process today and sort of a hard decision you had to make?
Yeah, actually, I can rewind a good chunk of time because, as you know, our industry has changed so much. And, we've gone through the mainframe world to client server to cloud. Like it's gone through so many different tech trends. And one of the big ones that hit in the early 2000s, I was actually at Informatica at the time. And my role was, building relationships with the SI companies, the system integrator companies, to deliver our technology to customers. And this was when a lot of the outsourcing started to come forward. And we started to see the firms in India step up with skill sets to deliver in an outsourced manner projects to multinational companies in the US or in Europe, worldwide. They were becoming this outsourced kind of almost an extension of the consultant population that had been built in the US and in Europe. And so when I saw this, it kind of triggered something from my early days when I was at Accenture and when Accenture was trying to build the base around SAP. And I remember back in 1993 when I started at Accenture, and I was at Anderson Consulting at the time, and they had said to all of us that were at the consultant level, if you go through the SAP training, you're all going to get a salary increase with this skill set. And I remember thinking, they're building a base. They want to build a population of consultants that can deliver SAP skills. So fast forward about 7 or 8 years, here I am at Informatica, and I take that same thinking and I'm seeing India build up, and I realize that for Informatica, in 4 days, I can get a consultant project ready. And I started thinking, there is a huge population of consultants in India. If I could just capture mind share, I could create a bench of skill set that they'd have to sell. And so what I did is I actually hired somebody in the US that I sent over to India for a year. He lived in India for a year and he was a trainer. And his job was to train as many consultants as he possibly could. And he ran 20 consultants a week through a standard training class. And he was skilling them on Informatica's power center at the time. And so within the first 4 or 5 months, we had a good chunk of consultants that were trained, but I realized that it was slow going. 20 consultants a week, it's going to take me some time. So we started to roll out a train the trainer program. And that took a little bit of effort because I had to gain buy-in from my leadership to provide those training materials for free. That was a huge, huge effort at the time. Go back and think in early 2000, people were not providing things for free. So it was a build it, they will come. If we provide these training materials, they will come to us. And so we took the train the trainer materials over to India, and within 1 year, we were able to ramp up 5,000 consultants on Informatica. And so it changed the shape of our business the next year because we had a base running across Accenture, Infosys, Tata Consulting Services, Wipro, HCL, Tech Mahindra, trained on Informatica, and they wanted to sell that bench. So now I could connect the skill sets to my sellers, and all of a sudden, the velocity of our sales absolutely accelerated. And it really changed our ability because now all of a sudden, we had a huge base of expertise and delivery. And we didn't have that the prior year. And so I took a page out of the Accenture book and I applied it to what I was trying to drive at Informatica. And it required a culture shift to embrace the Indian SIs. It required a lot of buy-in from the leadership to provide free training and to send a guy over to India for a year and have him commit his life to training these guys. That investment was so minimal when I look back on it. I mean, it was really under 500K all in. But the impact year on year on year of that one effort, it really changed what we were able to do. And so, I look back on that and I think little decisions, when you look at what's happening in the tech industry and you apply your learnings from wherever they came from and think about like style scenarios and take one learning from something that seems very unrelated and apply it to another, it is amazing how ideas can gel. And I really think that was the impetus for really driving to India was that idea that I saw happen at Anderson Consulting in the early days. And that's yielded very well for Informatica. And I've seen that mimicked by many, many companies since then.
And I think that's something that the best leaders do is they can pull from all of these different experiences and use pattern recognition to go, technically on paper, this looks different, but you know what? It's a really similar motion. It's a really similar pattern in this other industry, in this other scope and way. And can we try this? And can we use the wisdom from our past experiences? And this whole idea of how do we build the bench? Because you're
Mhm.
100% right. It is do we have a bench to execute? And do you have that, long-term strategic way of looking at things? And if I was going to guess, I could guess a lot of the lessons you learned from the change management and executive buy-in and leadership buy-in that you learned in the early days of Informatica, you had to apply to this massive shift that you pushed at Microsoft.
Absolutely. All the way along the way. Every one of my roles, I've learned something that I've applied to the next. And so it is, we have a quote at Microsoft, I reserve the right to learn every day. And today I'm learning something new again. And so, yes, we're in a constant learning mode. And I try to apply everything that I've learned so that we get better each and every day.
Is there one or two pitfalls that you've seen that you want to share so we can make different mistakes and not the same mistakes?
I think we talk about it, it's kind of Murphy's Law, but don't ever assume. Assumption kills you. And we still do it all the time. Like if you want to put a yellow sticky on your computer, it should say, don't assume. Everyone needs to have that reminder because we assume someone already knows. We assume they're already in our camp, or they assume they're going to get the information from someone else. We assume that topic is closed, done, dusted. It's not. Let's make sure, make sure you finish that sentence, get to that punctuation point. Don't assume it's there. I think that's one of the biggest pitfalls that we've all come into. And I fall into that all the time. I think it's been done, or I assume that that's done. Don't assume. I've learned that every single day. And I also, it applies to our entire lives. I apply it to my children. I apply it to my regular life every day. Making assumptions gets me into hot water all the time.
This was fantastic. And I feel like we can all learn a lot from your leadership, how you approach decision making. So we like to end every segment with a couple of quick hits.
Okay.
And just quick questions, hopefully should be fun. You have not received any of these. Are you ready?
You're ready.
All right. So what habit or hobby did you pick up during quarantine?
Oh, I did pick up two new habits or hobbies, I guess. One is I started recycling my candles, and I've become a candle maker. I'm remelting candles, and I got like some candle making kits, and I got my own wicks now. And I hate to throw candles away, and I'm a serial candle lighter. And so I've got candles all over my house, and now I'm recycling the ones, and I'm creating my own, and I'm using old glasses and old vases to make new cool candles. And my kids never know what kind of candle they're going to see the next day. So I've gotten very creative there. And then I've also planted my own herb garden. So now I'm growing cilantro and basil and chives, and I've got all different spices. And I had to buy grow lights because I live in Seattle and we don't have enough sun. And I had to move it indoors because I started this summer. It was outside and now it's inside. But I'm having fun trying to grow plants, which I don't do well, but I'm home so I can care for them and create more ambiance in my home with my candles.
That is really, really cool. It's such a fun, creative expression for everything.
Yeah.
Got do you have a favorite book or podcast that you've binged on recently?
That's interesting because I feel like I've lost my touch with podcasts because that was my commute.
Yeah.
And I don't have a commute anymore. So I've lost on, that quick hit every day. I love the daily from the New York Times. I mean, that gives me my 20 minutes of news. That's pretty much what I will always subscribe to. But other than that, I feel like I've lost a lot of the time where I'm feeding myself on my commute. And it's hard to replace that. It's you got to be really planful in that approach, because the other thing is my mornings, I used to spend a nice hour getting ready for the office. Well, my getting ready time is now very, very short. So I don't get that thinking and, time to just run through my ideas and let my brain run. So I'm finding that I'm trying to create more space for thinking because I've lost that. So I can't say I've adopted any new podcasts or any new books because I actually feel like I've lost that piece and I'm trying to bring it back. But I love the daily. That's the only way I keep up to speed with what's going on in the world.
Oh, that's definitely a good one. And I do think I was really similar to you. I used to get up at 4:45 in the morning, grab my stuff, go to the gym, work out, take a shower, get into work. If you ask me to get up at 4:45 right now, I'm going to tell you absolutely insane. If my first meeting is at 7, I might be up at 6:45.
Yep. It's true. And I wonder what the going into the office is going to evolve to, because I actually really like eradicating a lot of that getting ready time.
Yeah.
Kind of taking your life back.
Yes.
But I do miss the quiet time, at least the 10 or 15 minute commute where I had a chance to unplug from work on my way home or
Yep.
plug in on my way in, because my commute is 10 steps now.
Yep. Oh, yeah. I loved my walk in the mornings.
Mm.
That if I could have that little bit of a walk that goes in, and you know what? I have tried to say I'm going to walk to a coffee shop. I'll do that, and that'll be my morning walk. But why am I going to get up 45
Yeah.
minutes earlier than I have to?
Yep, you compromise it every time.
Yep. Yep. One day. But
Yep.
it's been 9 months, and I might have done it twice. So.
The one other thing I have to say is I have really leaned into the Pacific Northwest because I'm not traveling so much, and I finally get to be in a place that I live.
Mhm.
And so we live on Lake Washington. So I've been out kayaking a lot. We joined about a year and a half ago, we joined a boat club. And that is the one thing that has stayed stable through COVID. And so we learned how to go crabbing this summer, and we caught our own dinner. So we caught some Dungeness crab. Apparently it is salmon season. And so I have aspirations to learn how to salmon fish, because the idea of catching my own salmon to put on my table is insane. I can just go out my back door and do it. So I am trying to really embrace the Pacific Northwest, and I love what we have to offer up here. It's been something I haven't been able to do when I travel so much.
I feel like what I'm hearing is dinner parties at your house with
Uh-huh.
the homemade, handmade candles, pull the herbs from the herb garden. We've got this from the river.
Yeah, exactly. Dinner at the Fitzpatricks.
I think this is an excellent idea. I think
Yeah.
it's good for everybody.
Let's get COVID over.
Yes. Yes. My last question for you is, what's one question you wish people would ask you?
Hmm. Wow. That one I didn't expect. Um, I think the question that I always want to ask somebody, and no one ever asks me, but I'm always the one that wants to ask others, is if you didn't follow this path, what would you have done?
Yes.
And I, no one's asked me that, so I haven't really formulated that answer. But I do think that I would love to let my mind run on that. And I think if you asked me 10 years ago, it'd be different than what my answer is today. But I definitely would say that my answer today is very different than the path I've been on, because I've learned so much.
Mhm.
And I've learned so much about what is important to me now, that you always wish, hindsight 2020, I wish I knew what I know now 20 years ago. But I think the path I would have followed, I wouldn't have changed out of the tech industry. That has been an incredible blast to follow. I think there aren't choices that I would have made differently. I think there is more I might have tried to do. And there's always, everybody wants to do more. But I think if I had to completely change my trajectory and say, not high tech,
Mhm.
what would it have been? I have to say, I love the creative juices of, like my candling, making candles is really all about making a home. And I love decorating. I love the simplicity of design. And I'm a uber organized person. And so everything has a place in my home. And I probably would have wanted to go down that path of interior design or something. I love fashion design. Maybe it would have been in that world. Who knows?
I like this. Maybe second career one day.
Who knows? I'm up for it.
This
Plenty of time left.
Exactly. And, all the things we can do once we are out of captivity. Yes. And this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for coming on the show, for spending time with us. We have to get you back on for a roundtable.
Thank you so much, Lauren and Adam. It's been a blast chatting with you guys, and I always enjoy our interactions.
Truth Be Known is brought to you by Talend. A leader in data integration and data integrity, Talend enables every company to find clarity amidst the chaos. Talend Data Fabric brings together in a single platform all the necessary capabilities that ensure enterprise data is complete, clean, compliant, and readily available to everyone who needs it throughout the organization. Learn more at talend.com. That's TALEND.com.